All right. Give it a couple minutes. All right. I have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to start. And as people hop in, they hop in. So, hello, happy Carnival, season's greetings to everyone who is enjoying the Carnival season so far. Hope that the rain last night did not keep you from heading into the village. It didn't stop me. I was there to check out the village chill. So, really cool atmosphere. Got my bad boy satays. You know, you got to kick off the season right with some bad boy satays from the cheese path. And haven't gotten a crab back yet from Boot 75, but I know that Valda's holding on to it for me. So definitely going to be one of the first things I grab the minute that they have them. So because I went to the village, we do have coffee today. My coffee fact of the day is, did you know that in 1600, that's when the first coffee order uh, came to New York State? So that's when they received their first coffee order. But today, people in New York drink on average 7 cups of coffee in one business day. Well, one day actually in all 24 hours. So I thought, I've been there while working in Amsterdam. I think I shared this before that I think my coffee consumption was up to about 5 to 6, 7 cups a day, depending on how rough the day was. That's what happens when you put free coffee machines in a company. Some of the main topics that we're going to touch on today: a Parliament catch-up. Last week we did have meetings in Parliament. As you know, we're winding down this formation process, so we're still in a scenario where the current ministers are also sitting members of Parliament. So they've been switching back and forth between the aisle. Um, I unfortunately could not attend the meeting on the draft ordinance for higher education and research that took place with the representatives of the University of St. Martin. I did send my apologies to them. That, of course, deals with USM's concerns on some components of the draft ordinance for higher education. So that ordinance is meant to help have USM be accredited, give them access to other funding avenues as well once they have their accreditation sorted out. And then to be able to continue the type of research that they're doing, for example, with like Islands at the Helm. So I have shared support for this law, maybe not in its current form. USM did send to members of parliament their concerns with the law. There are certain words, for example, that don't really translate well from Dutch to English. And like, for example, a dean doesn't really kind of exist in Dutch. But nevertheless, those are little technical matters. But there's also some other items that need some serious review as per USM. So that meeting, I was unfortunately not able to go to, but I did get the feedback from my team on how it went, and now I believe the incoming Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports will have to take up the concerns of USM as we move forward. And I also was not able to attend the meeting for the draft national decree that extends the life of the NRPB, which is the executing the management body that was kind of put in place for the trust fund. So it's a bit of a go-between for the trust fund projects and government. I was able to attend the Enya meeting, which was quite interesting. There were some serious questions that myself and MP Weaver had. As I've mentioned numerous times, the both of us come from a very similar industry, which is the finance industry, predominantly trust. For myself, which from a compliance perspective, it gets kind of crazy. And I, much like in the meeting that I had with that we first had to discuss this Enya solution, I was not really soothed, I guess, by what was shared with us after that. So that is essentially the contents of that, and I'm trying to grab it here for you. Um, So we had the original documentation from the Minister of Finance, which was really just some technical terms and such. And then we were able to see the wider agreement. The minister let us have it basically. So they lifted the confidentiality of it. Um, and then we were able to go over from there. Now, one of my main concerns was the fact that I mentioned it in the first part of this meeting. I had mentioned the fact that what we have is a resolution fund, right? And then the resolution fund itself has a supervisory board that's going to be 4 members, 2 from Curacao, 1 from St. Martin, and 1 from the central bank, all on a binding nomination. All right. Underneath that, you have a management foundation, and then they're going to use capital injection to basically hold on to the newly created company of Enya Carib Holding, and then underneath that you have Enya Life, Zorg, Schade, etc. One of my main concerns was that you have a scenario where, number one, this is still pending regulatory approval. Number two, maybe Mr. Ansari and the rest of his cohorts decide to repay the money that they took out of Enya, and that is him and everybody else, including the local St. Martiners that received money over the years, that they decide to pay back. And then you have a scenario where you're able, so the management foundation is going to be able to, once they become profitable in the future, sell off the participations of Enya. So let's say Enya Life becomes profitable, Enya Zorg, but they require the approval of that exact resolution fund supervisory board. So a 4-man board, which again, that's not normal. Normal practice is you have an odd number so that there's a tie break. So I asked the minister, what happens with those particular elements. Then the minister said he needed 2 weeks to answer, so I make it as a moot point that my questions won't actually be responded to, at least not by him. So we'll have to see what the new Minister of Finance discovers about this agreement that they can then share with Parliament. And then, thereafter, he assured us that policyholders are not yet being affected. Indeed, this Enya solution requires a start of paying then into it from St. Martin's side in 2027. And I think as well, what I was unhappy about is that the public discussion of it said that we were tied down to a 50-year loan, but actually, our side as a country is 30 years, much like Curaçao's, and the central bank side is 50 years. But there are even questions there because it's going to be reliant on the central bank actually, doing well. And the last 2 reports, it has not been much profit happening, much income generation happening at the central bank. So nevertheless, it's something that we will continue to monitor with this incoming government, and they can then see what parameters are available to them to either shorten the amount of time that we're involved in this or renegotiate further down the line. The next meeting that we had dealt with the nature policy plan presented by the Minister of Rami. What can I say? I have kind of asked enough questions, I think, to this outgoing Minister of Rami regarding nature and protections for our environment. What I did find a little funny is that there was a question that I asked way back when we were in the meeting regarding the spatial development plan and strategy. And in that, I said, and we talked about it on the campaign too, we keep doing this thing where, we're writing these policies, we're writing these plans, but we're continuing to do the things that that are counter to the actual plan. So I read a portion of that very same nature policy that talks about terrestrial threats and how the risk to our environment has to do with specifically, overdevelopment, aggressive building and stuff like that. So I asked again, like, how are we going to, protect against this? When do we hit the pause button for development, on a large scale? And the minister's answer to me was that, well, they can't tell anyone what to do with their land. Okay. Um, at the same time, many people are acting as if this is a new thing, as if it's so wonderful. I know the minister was congratulated for coming with his nature policy plan. Oh my gosh, it was so great, so well written, but not respected, even though they wrote it. And I have to kick back to 1995 because we've already been down this road. In 1995, there is a journal with recommendations to protections on the island, which was at the time left to what was then the version of Rami to handle. Um, that dealt with protection of caves. It talked about our biodiversity. It talked about bats, animals that I cannot tell you I have seen or even heard on St. Martin since then. Between Hurricane Lewis and between the development, this is where we're at. And so I find it kind of funny to congratulate when the same things are still happening. So the terrestrial threats that existed in 1995 are still the terrestrial threats that exist today in 2024. And much like I did around the time of Irma, I wasn't even elected, where I was saying, this is what happens when you don't plan from an infrastructure perspective or an environmental perspective. In 1995, we got mollywopped by Hurricane Lewis. We got a blank check from the Netherlands essentially to improve our infrastructure, improve our resilience. There are people sitting in parliament and government today, whether at a civil service or political level, that had a role to play back then. And then when Irma came knocking, what had changed? What had changed? So when I say that we need to hit the pause button and be serious about what we actually want to see happen in terms of development and sustainability and protection of what is left, because we're on an island, guys. I talk to persons who work in different governments in different islands around the world. Everywhere is facing the same challenge: erosion due to climate change, loss of land due to climate change. We already have minimal land. If I look at certain developments that I've heard are coming up in Point Blanche, you have people who want to build on a cliff because they want a nice view. But who's responsible for when soil erosion and ultimately rock erosion dropped your house into the ocean? It's a question that needs an answer. So I'm looking forward to that. The minister also said he would need 2 weeks to return to answer the questions, but I see that there's no actual desire to move any kind of work forward with this outgoing government. It's just, the narrative that the incoming government is weak. But, for me, weakness is I stop, put down my tools when I realize I'm not coming back. So that is the ultimate display of weakness in my honest opinion. So for me, I just table these questions again and work on focusing how Parliament can support the incoming government in actually executing tangible policy that makes sense, and that's not us writing a policy about protecting against terrestrial threats with one hand, and on the other we have developers destroying a bridge, and then we act like Spider-Man meme. Oh my gosh, I don't know who did this. So yeah, that was the last week in Parliament. We can take a brief look ahead at what's coming this week, because it's a preparation week, but there are some meetings that are happening. And tomorrow we have, for example, a very informal closed door meeting with we have an informal meeting with the CFT. It's just a chat, really, about how things go. And I think this is also for the benefit of the incoming, the new members of Parliament who've just come in. And then we are going to have just a discussion to approve the delegation that's going to be traveling to IPCO in June, to the Netherlands. Now, this also brings me to a closed door discussion that we had with the General Audit Chamber, in which they shared some reports with us regarding, especially APS, their report on Parlatino and our travel. And of course, as MP De Weaver, who's the chair of that committee, guessed correctly, everybody kind of focused on the travel part of it, and nobody really blinked at the APS part. But there, I said, it is up to us now to take this APS report, the report that they did on SMEA, the investment agency, and SMIC, to kind of see how we can move forward and get some kind of clarity into where we're at and what we can realistically do. I've spoken before about the fact that, if you look at the global trend, pension age keeps going up. But how can we teach people how to be more financially sound, more financially safe, so that they're not just reliant on their pension? Because you're not supposed to just be reliant on your pension. So that's something to think about moving forward. Um, Coming up this month, we have April 22nd, tomorrow's Earth Day. Yesterday, there was an event from Shola, one of my favorite farmers, if not my favorite farmer, on the island. And I'm sure that was wonderful. I was unable to attend because I was actually at the peaceful manifestation for the old house in French Quarter, which is something that I spoke to a couple of people there, and I also gave some comments to persons who were interviewing those who attended. And I said something that I think none of us really think about. Um, I was away for a week, just taking some time to relax, and my partner and I spent a couple of days in Miami, and we went to Vizcaya Gardens. If you've ever been to Miami, I highly recommend it. Um, Vizcaya Gardens is, I think, 180 acres. Yes, it was a huge property that was developed by a gentleman named John Deering. He died without any kids. Pretty sure he was gay. But basically, it's sprawling museum, botanical gardens. It's amazing actually to see it right there, looking into the Bay of Biscayne. I went to school in Miami, so I'd never been because I never had people that really wanted to go to these types of excursions. But what struck me was that his nieces inherited the property. They sold the southern property, so there's a fence when you get to a certain point that blocks you off from the rest. And then when they realized that they themselves could not give it the respect it deserved in terms of maintenance, they donated it to the city of Miami. And now it's a tourist attraction for Miami that generates revenue. That means that it's a heritage site that is protected, that is maintained. Their upkeep is amazing. I'll be posting some pictures later this week now that I've gotten a chance to catch myself from coming back from my trip. But they I often have asked in the past, why don't families that have these heritage sites in their portfolio, I guess, you know, because they squawk a lot about heritage and about museum this and museum that and her history and such and legacy, donate it. Donate it or come up with a maintenance plan that is between you and government, and the two of you can figure out how you make it work from there. But for me, I think, if these things had been donated to government and a proper plan had been put up where the maintenance was basically paid for by those visiting, because that's how it works, guys. When you go to heritage sites, when you visit this rainforest trip and that safari trip and that whatever, that money goes to maintain and preserve those spots. So that's always something that I think has kind of struck me as odd, for Simatin, that most of these landholding families uh, never really had that discussion. It's okay. Capitalism. Of course, another topic that was in everybody's mind before I traveled and since I've been back is everybody's favorite topic. Um, the lights. The lights. I really need somebody in GB to just come outside. Just come outside. I just want to talk. I just want to have a conversation. Come outside so we can chat. Nobody's gonna jump you. Well, I'm not gonna jump you. I can't speak for the rest. But I'm actually, I don't know. I don't know. How do I say? They're trying to be politically correct still. I'm wondering when we're going to get French. On GB, because I live in Defiance, as most know, and we rarely lose power. It's always been kind of funny for me when people in my friend chats with the WhatsApp groups, they're like, "Power gone in Bel Air, power gone in South Ward, power gone in Cold Bay," and I'm like, smirks in defiance. But now, before I left, in one day, I was trying to get myself together, trying to do laundry, trying to, clean and everything, because you like to leave a clean house before you travel. And I think current went 3 times in a day, 3 times in a day for an hour and change each time, 2 hours one time, and it's nuts. I think about outside of myself, because I always try to think, how are other people impacted by this? I think about people who have medication in a refrigerator that needs to stay refrigerated. I think about people who are already struggling to buy food and now run a risk of food going bad because GB runs a risk of blowing out their fridge, and they're at work one of their 2, 3 jobs, and they're trying to think about, well, if current gone, what am I going to do with this food that's in my fridge that's now spoiled? um I just need to know what is really going on, I guess. And I'm tired of the comforting words of things are okay, we're progressing, or things are moving forward. No, where are we at? And I've said this repeatedly, and I don't know how many more meetings, because everybody will meet me and say, when I call a meeting on it, how many more meetings must PFP call? We were the ones that called the first meeting with the outgoing minister of Rami when the hack happened, because at the time everybody wanted to be shareholder rep. And then what happened is, 2, 3 weeks after, I guess he must have decided this fire too hot for me, my son, and he threw the prime minister into the grill instead, as the ultimate representative of the shareholder, which is government. And since then, it's just been kind of varying realities, I guess, with what's happening with GB. I'm really hoping that someone just says, let's just tell the truth. And this takes me to a point that I've made before when I first was elected to Parliament, which is um, in discussions about the integrity chamber and integrity in general. We had between 2010 and I think 2014, there were about 3 or 4 integrity reports written by different companies. And one of them, all of them actually mentioned the creation of a whistleblower policy, not just for government from a civil servant perspective, but for the government owned companies, that there should be a whistleblower policy in place. Now, you see, many people will try to say that I'm asking for a whistleblower from GB to be protected. And then, well, why didn't I ask for the alleged whistleblower from the airport to be protected? Because that person was not a whistleblower. Whistleblowing is I am going to be revealing confidential information in a confidential manner, in a way that has to do with the whole, with the greater good of the whole, not because I personally feel threatened or like I'm about to be embarrassed and I want to clap back at somebody by throwing out confidential information specifically about that particular person that has no bearing on the whole. When you have whistleblowers at pharmaceutical companies, it is because they are doing things that could lead to people dying. When you have whistleblowers at financial companies, it's because they're doing things that could lead to people losing their pension, their savings, their everything. That's how that works. So if we had a whistleblower policy in place, I'm sure that there'd be some soul at GB who would, protected by that policy, be able to tell us the truth about what is happening at GEB. Because I don't think that we have it. You have people that are still not getting their bills. You have people that still have no clarity as to when they might get a bill. And in general, I actually don't believe that GB has done anything in terms of implementing best practices in cybersecurity. Because when I look at what's happening around the region in terms of penetrative hack attacks on certain other islands' infrastructure, and whether it's their electricity company, their banks, like I mentioned last time, or some other utility, I don't think that we have been left alone. I think it has gone beyond a breach or an attempted breach. I think it's just GB has probably been hacked again, and we just don't know that because why would I admit that I've actually done diddly doo since the last time? Um, but I just think about what happens when all of this continues to trickle up into our hospitality industry. Because what's happening is this: you have all these developments. Remember the pause button? We haven't hit pause. So we've just been playing. In fact, it's been on fast forward, 2 times speed. We haven't hit pause. You have all these big developments that are coming online. JW Marriott's already online. The towers came online some time ago. You have others that are slowly plugging into the grid. And then you have this scenario where these bigger, better cruise ships are also going to be pulling megawatts, like electricity, from us. How much do they need? Nobody knows. So all of this is something that we need to think about, because you know who suffers when the tourism industry gets prioritized for utility use and services? Y'all, me, you, all of us. That's the reality. There are countries, at the time when I was working at Sonesta Maho, there were countries in South America where utility access was prioritized for hotels and other tourist related developments. And they had to time themselves on how much electricity they had during the day as a people from the country to be able to do what they had to do at home. Children had to time, well, it's 6 o'clock, power going off at 8, so I've got 2 hours to do my homework. Like that's the reality of what happens when priority isn't given to people who actually live here 24/7. Um, so I'm really hoping that someone from GB, because I would go up for that person if somebody were to come and say, XYZ is happening and this is going to be a concern for the entire country. It's a matter of national security. Whatever platform we have available to us as members of parliament, that's when you should be using it, not to help somebody keep a job that they probably didn't deserve in the first place. Um, so yeah, that's essentially the bigger topic that I wanted to touch on from a local perspective. Other topics that are happening, of course, I'm sure everybody is watching and saying, "Okay, Melissa, when are you going to talk about the formation?" I am going to talk about a formation right after I mention another unfortunate infrastructure and environment related thing that is going on, which is, as we all know, the public auction of the Carbon Grove development. Now, I'm not sure what is available in the sense of the realm of justice. I went to school in the US, so I have a very, sometimes I have a very US minded, Ray always says this, you have a very US minded approach to justice and the justice system. Um, I'm wondering how it is that we're not able to collaborate with the US justice system and get this person out of the States, because I believe from what I last heard, that's where they are, Orlando, maybe Winter Haven, one of them. But yeah, get them out of there and bring them back to face the people that they did this to. That's what I would like to see happen. But it's very unfortunate first of all, the auction ended in a total failure. And I'm really curious to see as well what happens from a central bank perspective for the bank that was providing the financing. Am I sure that their new purchaser, Orco Bank, is going to probably work to clear them up? Most definitely. But it shouldn't have happened, is what I'm trying to say. And speaking of banks, WIB. Okay, you will pay for your crimes. Okay, on to the formation. Friday, and there will be an official message going up on our social media pages either later today or tomorrow morning. The full list of minister candidate names was handed in to the governor, and that now the process will be as follows. So, because, yeah, so essentially, it's been a very challenging process. Many times it's been pretty frustrating, pretty incoherent, I have to say. However, with that final submission of the full list of names, the formateur's report, as they call it, to the governor, um, the next step that occurs is the creation of the national decrees or landsbesluiten to appoint them. So the government has to create those besluiten, and then the governor and the prime minister sign off on those decrees, and then the candidate ministers will be sworn in a ceremony that is officiated by the governor, and then they will take up their posts and the work begins. When you read the official post that we're going to put up, the official statement, then on our social media pages, you're gonna see a last bit there where we talk about the need for clarity and the need for cohesion and the need for sense to prevail when it comes to any process actually that impacts this country and impacts our autonomy and the way that our democratic environment moves forward. We in 2020 we had a meeting where there was a discussion about the screening law. Curacao, as you know, has one, and it really irons out the details of a screening law, what should be looked at, what can be looked at, how it should be looked at, and who should look at it and have a say in the process. So it is a very stringent law. This is something I've mentioned before. We have been examining it as PFP and how it can be adopted and adapted indeed for St. Martin. So this is one of the first topics that I myself and MP Louis will be bringing up as this incoming government takes office and things start to move forward with regards to it. So that's where it's at. So we will see. We are on track though to, well, the report has been handed in early. As you'll recall, the new deadline was given was actually April 26th. So the report was handed in early. And yeah, it should be that there's a tentative date set for swearing in. And I'm sure that that will be communicated to the public, whether by the coalition or by the governor's cabinet itself. From a regional news perspective, there are two things that I kind of wanted to touch on, which is accessible regional travel. Uh, First of all, super happy that Winnie is now flying to Nevis directly, so I can go visit my boy Fion. So trying to see when I can get that done. Super excited because I've not been able to visit many of those islands before, even though you see them. But when it's $400 to fly to St. Kitts, one wonders if swimming might be the the better vibe. Um, Leah 2020, though, according to Gaston them, is still on schedule. Antigua and Barbuda's information minister essentially shared that things, plannings are, it's still going through. There were some issues that were discovered during the test flights that they were doing, so new parts were already purchased. Now they just have to pass inspection to obtain the air operator certificate by the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority. And then, Liat will be back, Liat 2024, because it's not 2020 any longer. So do hope that that happens, so that we can finally get like other options as well for regional travel. In farming and food security news, though, I thought it was kind of cool to read that the Prime Minister of St. Vincent offered to lease his personal land at $1 a year to young farmers. So I think that's kind of putting their land where their mouth is in regards to encouraging farming. And this is something that if I had it on the Dutch side, I would definitely encourage it because, as I've shared before, in this safe space, I am a person that has killed a basil plant. So I won't be farming, but I will, of course, always support other people stepping into that realm and working towards our food security. And I also want to give a little shout out to Yellow Sage Farms, who are doing great things in terms of growing greens. I've tasted their wasabi arugula; it's amazing. But I'm also super excited about Roots Simatin. Like they grow mushrooms, king oysters, oyster mushrooms, um, some other mushroom, lion's mane, and one other that the name I cannot recall. But you could find them on Instagram, and you can order the mushrooms from them. Um, I love mushrooms. I don't like seeing them grow because it triggers a fear in me. But I do love mushrooms a lot. Will I accept someone giving me a king oyster and telling me it's a steak? Absolutely not. But definitely, I encourage people to buy locally for those types of things because when I see their mushrooms as opposed to what's available in the supermarket, I'm definitely going to be ordering their mushrooms for when I have a mushroom dish in mind, because it definitely looks fresher, brighter. The colors, everything is just different when it's locally grown. So most definitely, very happy to see Prime Minister Gonzalez taking such a step and saying, I have this land, it's not developed. You could rent it $1 a year, and grow produce and sell produce, and that is how you actually push those types of economic drivers as a leader. Then I think, um, in climate change news, and yes, I'm going to add this as a regular because it's all interconnected. Not to sound like one of those conspiracy theories, because it's not a conspiracy; it's actually fact, scientific fact. The United Arab Emirates recorded their heaviest rainfall in 75 years. I'm sure we all saw pictures of the flooding in Dubai, and yes, that is climate change. That's not cloud seeding. I spoke before on the live stream about how climate change has impacted and changed the mosquitoes' breeding cycle, which is why we had such a rampant outbreak of dengue. And climate change is probably what's going to drive the next pandemic, to be honest, because that is how things work. Diseases, animals, everything will change to accommodate whatever the new reality is in terms of weather and their climate. We had flash flooding as well in Pakistan and Afghanistan that killed over 100 people. Heavy rains and flash floods swept the entire region. And, we have seen this happen in Pakistan already over the last couple of years. And the wildfires in Guyana still getting worse due to El Nino, which is, of course, the weather pattern that impacts this particular spot of the world. There have been recorded 1,285 wildfires in Guyana since January. We're in April. Um, so yeah, Sahara dust. If you are like me and you suffer from some sinus issues, you're definitely going to be feeling it, and you felt it the last few weeks. It's been coming, it's been going, it's been here, it's been there. But I do have to thank every god that has ever been worshipped that we are not as bad as Barbados and Trinidad. Because when I see pictures from Trinidad, it immediately makes me want to cough. And I'm really hoping that nothing shifts. I mean, I hope it shifts for them, that it's not, terrorizing poor Bridget. But I definitely hope that it shifts in a way that it protects and saves Trinidad, but that it doesn't shift in a way that it comes up the chain and then lands here. Because if you look at those pictures, it's like Trinidad looks like nuclear fallout, and I don't ever want to see St. Martin looking like that. And yeah, we also have, in India, farmers are trying to embrace going back to, natural farming techniques to kind of fight the effects of climate change. So you're seeing this like regression and reversal in these things that happen around the world. And seeing that the effect that it's having worldwide, it continues to kind of just radicalize me, even when it comes to talking about, hitting a pause on development. Like you keep pouring concrete, but what is going to happen if, a, imagine a chunk of a cliff breaks off? What happens to whatever is on that cliff? I think about that all the time, guys. And in the something that is definitely going to impact us, as at least the Dutch side, because the most of our meat is imported from the U.S. Our meat and our poultry. The avian flu outbreak that was impacting the chickens in the U.S. has jumped from bird to cow, because some brainiac had the idea to mix chicken waste into the feed for other livestock. So you had cows basically eating chicken waste, and now the cows are sick. So if you do have chickens, though, be vigilant, because if feed is imported, and other things that you use for your laying hens and such, you might end up with some sick birds, because of course something like this, it touches every aspect of chicken farming. And so just pay attention to if you have sick birds, and if you do, remove them from the flock, monitor the flock, and so forth. And yeah, take care of that. Um, and yeah, there was a point I wanted to read. So from the World Health Organization, when it comes to bird flu, from 2003 to April 1st, 2024, there have been a total of 889 cases and 463 deaths, um, caused by influenza A H5N1, the virus, which has been reported worldwide from 23 countries. The most recently reported case in humans prior to the current case was in March 2024 in Vietnam. There were 11. The human case in Texas, that recent, is the reported in the region of the Americas, is the most recent prior case having been reported was in Chile in March 2023. So it's making the jumps, folks, and that is how these things work. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not experimentation. It's literally science. If there are some resources, of course, about bird flu and food safety, cook your eggs all the way through. If you're like my dad, you might enjoy a runny egg, but even he got to be eating his hard fried, and hard boiled, these days, because you don't want to take that risk, of course. And that's pretty much what I had to cover. I also just want to take note that it is Carnival. If you have a favorite booth, feel free to let me know in the comments, or let me know on WhatsApp if you have me on WhatsApp. If you don't, let us know in the PFP community group, or just comment on the video at any time. We will see it. Last night, I graced the Bearded Chef, which is Bearded Cook, sorry, booth 10. Mark, big shout out to you with the Conaroni. As well as other drinks. I had my breakfast from there yesterday. I didn't go to the breakfast fed. My sister very graciously brought me breakfast. It was delicious. Salt fish with some Johnny cake, and a boiled egg. Always nice. Hard boiled. But yeah, definitely check out Carnival. Today was the children's parade. And as we get into that run of the most busiest time, I want to also urge everyone to make it a safe Carnival, guys. For Juvie especially, let's be on the road, let's be respectful, and just be careful. Mind your friends. Remember that if you go out together, technically you are your brother's keeper or your friend's keeper in that instance. So if you go out together, make sure you all make it home safe. And that's all I'm asking everyone to pay attention to for this Carnival season. Thank you for tuning in. And next week we should be up and running again with the live. I know I missed two because I wasn't here, but I definitely needed the break. So happy to have gotten that. And yeah, enjoy the week and enjoy Carnival again.